At 11:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a photograph appeared on an encrypted forum that, if authentic, reveals the most lucrative conspiracy in human history. The image shows Jeff Bezos seated across from three individuals in what appears to be a sterile, windowless conference room. On the table between them lie documents marked Psyche 16 Extraction Protocol and Lunar Helium-3 Monopolization Framework. Behind them, shells display what looks suspiciously like genuine meteorite samples and crystalline structures that shouldn't exist on Earth. If this meeting actually took place, we're looking at the formation of humanity's first off-world cartel. And if it didn't, well, that raises even more disturbing questions about who wants us to think it did. You know what's unsettling? There's this obscure Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns discovers a way to mine space rocks from his backyard and ends up controlling the world's supply of cosmic gold. At the time, it seemed like typical Springfield absurdity. But here's where things get uncomfortable. The timing of this leak isn't accidental. 3 weeks ago, Luxembourg quietly amended its space resource utilization laws. 2 weeks ago, NASA announced budget cuts to their asteroid research programs. 1 week ago, Blue Origin filed 17 new patents related to extraterrestrial material processing. Now we have this photograph. Either we're witnessing the most coordinated coincidence in modern history, or someone is moving very expensive chess pieces while the rest of us are still figuring out the rules of the game. Let me walk you through why this image should terrify anyone who understands basic economics. Luxembourg, despite being smaller than Rhode Island, has positioned itself as the world's legal haven for space mining operations. Their laws essentially allow private companies to claim ownership of anything they extract from asteroids, moons, or planetary bodies. It's the ultimate legal loophole wrapped in a bow of encouraging space exploration. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos has been remarkably quiet about Blue Origin's actual capabilities. We see the rockets, we hear about lunar missions, but the company's real technological focus has always been suspiciously vague about payload specifications and orbital manufacturing capabilities. The third figure in the photograph, the one whose face is partially obscured by shadows, appears to be wearing the kind of specialized clothing you'd expect from someone who's actually handled extraterrestrial materials. Notice the subtle metallic threading in the fabric, the way the light reflects differently off their sleeves. That's not standard business attire. That's contamination-resistant smart fabric designed for environments where a single particle of the wrong material could kill you. Which raises the question, what exactly have they been handling? Here's what makes this even chilling. The documents visible in the photograph reference Psyche 16, which happens to be a metallic asteroid located between Mars and Jupiter. NASA estimates its core contains enough iron, nickel, and precious metals to be worth approximately $10 quadrillion. That's not a typo. We're talking about more wealth than has ever existed in human civilization, sitting in space, waiting for someone with the right technology and legal framework to claim it. And apparently, that someone has already held their first board meeting.
But that's not the worrying part. The worrying part is what happens to Earth's economy when someone successfully extracts even a fraction of that material. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that gold, platinum, and rare earth elements, the foundation of our entire technological infrastructure, are now as common as sand. Every government's gold reserves become worthless overnight. Every technology company's supply chain advantage evaporates. Every geopolitical alliance based on resource scarcity crumbles. We're not just looking at an economic disruption. We're looking at the potential collapse of every power structure that currently keeps the world functioning. And here's where things get uncomfortable. The Simpsons predicted this too, in their own twisted way. Remember that episode where Lisa discovers that all of Springfield's problems could be solved by mining space crystals, but then the crystals turn out to be radioactive and slowly drive everyone insane? The writers played it for laughs, but there's something eerily prophetic about the core message. When you fundamentally alter the scarcity of resources, you fundamentally alter human behavior in ways you can't predict. Let's pretend for our own sanity that this meeting was just a theoretical discussion about future possibilities. Even then, the implications are staggering. If major private entities are already coordinating legal frameworks for space resource extraction, they're operating on a timeline that assumes the technology is much closer to reality than anyone has publicly admitted. Blue Origin's recent rocket tests haven't just been about tourism or satellite deployment. They've been stress testing payload systems for something much heavier and much more valuable than passengers or communication equipment. The economic analysis gets even more disturbing when you consider the players involved. Luxembourg isn't just providing legal cover, they're providing financial infrastructure. The country already hosts more investment funds than any other European nation relative to its size. Their banking privacy laws rival Switzerland's, and their technology sector has been quietly developing blockchain-based ownership verification systems that could theoretically track the provenance of materials from non-terrestrial sources. Translation: they've been building the legal and financial architecture to legitimize space mining profits long before anyone successfully brings back their first asteroid sample. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos has been methodically positioning Amazon's logistics network for something beyond terrestrial commerce. The company's investments in autonomous transportation, orbital manufacturing research, and last-mile delivery solutions for extreme environments suddenly make sense when viewed through the lens of managing supply chains that extend beyond Earth's atmosphere. We're not just talking about mining asteroids. We're talking about establishing permanent industrial operations in space, with Earth serving as the primary market and the manufacturing base for increasingly exotic materials. The technological implications are equally unsettling. Successfully mining asteroids requires solving problems that don't have terrestrial equivalents. How do you prevent microscopic metal particles from contaminating Earth's biosphere? How do you manage the gravitational effects of bringing massive amounts of dense material into near-Earth orbit? How do you prevent the social chaos that would result from suddenly introducing unlimited quantities of previously rare materials into global markets? The answers to these questions aren't just technical challenges. They're the blueprints for reshaping civilization itself. But here's the part nobody is talking about. If this cartel actually exists, they're not just planning to mine asteroids. They're planning to control the flow of space-derived materials to maintain artificial scarcity on Earth. Think about it. Why bring back enough platinum to crash the global market when you can bring back just enough to dominate it? Why flood Earth with rare earth elements when you can gradually release them to maintain technological superiority over nations that don't have access to your supply chain? We're looking at the potential creation of the first truly post-terrestrial economic empire. And this is where the Simpsons connection becomes genuinely unsettling. There's another episode where Professor Frink accidentally discovers a way to transmute common elements into gold, but instead of sharing the discovery, he secretly uses it to manipulate global economics from behind the scenes.
The episode ends with Frank realizing that he's become more powerful than any government on Earth simply by controlling something that everyone else considers a natural law. Sound familiar? Let's examine the worst-case scenarios, because that's what keeps me awake at night. Scenario 1. The cartel successfully establishes monopolistic control over space-derived resources and uses that leverage to essentially become a shadow government for Earth. Every technology company, every military, every government becomes dependent on their supply chains. Democracy becomes irrelevant when 3 private entities control access to the materials that power modern civilization.
Scenario 2. Competing cartels emerge, leading to the first extraterrestrial resource wars. China launches their own asteroid mining operations. Russia partners with Iran to establish lunar extraction facilities. The European Union creates a counter-cartel with African nations who possess rare earth deposits. Suddenly, we're not just competing for terrestrial resources, we're militarizing space itself to secure access to cosmic wealth. The potential for conflict escalates beyond anything we've experienced in human history. Scenario 3, and this is the one that really keeps me up at night. Someone makes a mistake. A miscalculation in orbital mechanics sends an asteroid fragment into Earth's atmosphere. A contamination protocol fails and introduces alien microorganisms into our biosphere. A single technical error in handling exotic materials triggers an environmental catastrophe that makes nuclear meltdowns look like minor inconveniences. We're talking about manipulating cosmic forces with terrestrial safety protocols, and that's a combination that historically doesn't end well. Here's what I think is actually happening, and I wish I was making this up. The leaked photograph isn't evidence of a conspiracy, it's a message. Someone with access to these meetings wants the public to know that this cartel exists, either as a warning or as preparation for what's coming next. The deliberate inclusion of identifiable documents, the strategic lighting that reveals just enough detail to be credible but not enough to be conclusive, this is psychological warfare disguised as a leaked candid photograph. Think about the timing again. We're in the middle of a global economic transition where traditional power structures are already unstable. Governments are struggling with inflation, supply chain disruptions, and social unrest. The last thing global stability needs is the sudden introduction of post-scarcity economics controlled by private entities. But maybe that's exactly the point. Maybe the cartel isn't just mining asteroids. Maybe they're planning to trigger a controlled collapse of terrestrial economics to position themselves as the inevitable replacement for current power structures. The Luxembourg connection adds another layer of complexity. The country has historically specialized in providing legal frameworks for activities that other nations consider too risky or ethically questionable. Their space mining laws aren't just permissive, they're actively designed to circumvent international treaties that were written when space resource extraction was still science fiction. We're looking at legal arbitrage on a cosmic scale, where private entities exploit jurisdictional loopholes to claim ownership of resources that, by any reasonable interpretation of existing international law, should belong to all of humanity. But that's not the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part is how normal this photograph looks. 3 people in business attire sitting around a conference table discussing what amounts to the largest economic transition in human history as casually as they might discuss quarterly earnings reports. There's no sense of historical significance, no acknowledgement that they're potentially reshaping the fundamental nature of human civilization. Just another Tuesday afternoon meeting about reshaping the cosmic order. And this brings us back to the Simpsons' uncanny ability to predict these moments. There's an episode where the Springfield nuclear plant accidentally taps into a parallel dimension and starts importing alternative energy that's incredibly efficient, but gradually reveals itself to be controlled by interdimensional entities who use it to manipulate human behavior. The episode plays it for laughs, but the underlying message is terrifying. When you introduce exotic resources into familiar systems, you inevitably introduce exotic forms of control that you didn't anticipate. Let me ask you some questions that I genuinely can't answer, and I'm hoping someone in the comments can help me make sense of this. If you had access to unlimited rare earth elements, Would you use that advantage to help humanity transition to sustainable technology? Or would you use it to maintain technological superiority over your competitors? If you could effectively control the global supply of materials essential for renewable energy, space exploration, and advanced computing, would you prioritize global stability or private profit? And most importantly, if you discovered that private entities were already making these decisions without any public input or oversight, what would you do about it?
Here's another question that's been bothering me. Why leak this photograph now? If the cartel wanted to keep their operations secret, this image would never have surfaced. If they wanted to go public, they would have held a press conference. The leak feels deliberate but unofficial, like someone wants to gauge public reaction before making formal announcements, which suggests that whatever they're planning, they're still concerned about public acceptance or political resistance. The economic implications extend far beyond just mining asteroids. Successfully extracting and processing space-derived materials requires developing technologies that could revolutionize terrestrial manufacturing, energy production, and transportation. The same systems needed to refine asteroid metals could be adapted to process Earth-based materials more efficiently than anything currently possible. We're not just looking at new sources of wealth, we're looking at completely new technological capabilities that could make current industrial processes obsolete overnight. And here's where the conspiracy gets even deeper. If major technology companies are secretly coordinating with space mining cartels, they're not just investing in future resources, they're positioning themselves to control the transition from terrestrial to space-based economics. Amazon's logistics network, Google's data processing capabilities, Microsoft's cloud computing infrastructure. All of these systems could be seamlessly adapted to manage the complexity of space-based resource extraction and distribution. But that's not what keeps me awake at night. What keeps me awake at night is the possibility that this cartel isn't planning to supplement Earth's resources, they're planning to replace them. Why maintain expensive terrestrial mining operations when you can extract materials from environments where environmental protection laws don't apply? Why negotiate with sovereign governments over resource access when you can claim ownership of entire asteroids under Luxembourg's conveniently permissive legal framework? The leaked photograph shows 3 people making decisions that will affect every human being currently alive and every human being who will ever be born. And they're making these decisions in a windowless room, without public input, without democratic oversight, without any accountability to the civilizations they're about to reshape. If this doesn't terrify you, you haven't been paying attention. Here's my prediction, and I genuinely hope I'm wrong. Within the next 18 months, we're going to see the first successful commercial extraction of materials from an asteroid or lunar source. The announcement will be framed as a technological triumph, a new chapter in human exploration, a solution to terrestrial resource scarcity. The media will focus on the scientific achievement and the potential benefits for renewable energy technology and space exploration. What they won't mention is that the same announcement will mark the beginning of the most significant economic transition in human history, controlled entirely by private entities who have already spent years positioning themselves to profit from the chaos that follows. The leaked photograph isn't evidence of a conspiracy, it's evidence of preparation. Someone has been planning for this moment, and they're ready. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. 2 days ago, another photograph surfaced on the same encrypted forum. This one shows a 4th figure entering the same windowless room, but their face is completely obscured by digital distortion. The metadata suggests the image was taken 47 minutes after the original photograph, but the conference table is now empty except for a single document marked Phase 2,
lunar industrial complex. That wasn't the end of it. Yesterday, someone uploaded what appears to be encrypted communication logs between the same individuals. The messages are heavily redacted, but certain phrases remain visible. Mars staging facility operational by 2027. Titan methane extraction protocols approved. And most disturbingly, Earth dependency termination timeline accelerated. These aren't just mining operations anymore. We're looking at the systematic establishment of human civilization beyond Earth's control.
The encryption used in these communications isn't standard commercial software. Military analysts who've examined the leaked fragments identify signature patterns consistent with quantum-resistant algorithms, the kind of technology typically reserved for state-level intelligence operations. Either these private entities have developed cryptographic capabilities that exceed most government agencies, or they're receiving support from sources with access to classified encryption technology. Neither possibility is particularly comforting. Here's what makes this even more unsettling. The communication timestamps span 18 months, suggesting this cartel has been coordinating operations far longer than the leaked photographs indicate. The earliest messages reference preliminary extraction yields exceeding projections by 340% and terrestrial market manipulation protocols successfully tested. Translation: they've already been mining space-based materials and secretly introducing them into Earth's supply chains to test economic impact models. If coincidences this loud exist, I've never seen one. Someone wants us to know that the space mining cartel isn't just extracting materials from asteroids. They're building permanent industrial infrastructure beyond Earth's atmosphere. They've been testing market manipulation for over a year, and they're planning to make terrestrial resource dependence obsolete within the next decade. And that changes everything we thought we knew about the future of human civilization.